If we're going to spend more money on our Department of Defense, on our NDAA, why don't we pay military recruits more money instead of paying for electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging stations? That is an embarrassment, and I think it's an insult to the American people.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member Smith. I have good news in that the NDAA does include a raise for our service members, which is long overdue.
Got them. We got them.
At this point, we know what we get when it comes to Marjorie Taylor Greene, unhinged rants.
Sick and tired of the bullshit annex I have to deal with constantly from the Democrats. So that's what we just went through in there. And then they're sitting there, they can attack my character all day long. What's his face in there, whoever was talking last was calling me insane, but yet we can't say, oh, they're attacking my character.
Weird workout posts with subliminal nods to Capitol rioters, I guess. And an insatiable ability to further humiliate herself time and time again. Only this one in particular, well, it piqued my interest because it touches on a subject that I love to debunk dearly. Republicans and their lip service to the military.
I'm also grateful to all veterans who have served, as well as the men and women who serve our country right now, so that we can give our men and women in uniform all the tools that they need and treat them the best way possible.
Please, for me to understand.
Well, I was talking about how the leadership of this country caused 13 to get killed in Afghanistan, which I'm sure as a veteran that upsets you. They armed the Taliban. They now have training in the military that for woke training. Those are the things I was talking about. Forcing COVID-19.
That has nothing to do with my service. Here's the problem.
Sir, you can come out and argue with me that I did not say that.
Disparaging things against the Jewish community or disrespecting the United States Congress, and you're ashamed.
Is it just me, or is anyone else ever tired of hearing Marjorie Taylor Greene say, "I'm speaking for the American people"? No, she's not. She's speaking for her greedy ass, stupid self. Her ignorant, unintelligent dipshittery of Russian garbage and QAnon propaganda. Oh my God, Marjorie, I hope you see this. You're not smart. You're not smart, you're a traitor, and you do not speak for Americans.
So this week, Marge tore into the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, during a floor debate, but some of her criticism flew in the face of what was actually in the bill. In other words, she likely never read the thing, but insisted on going off about how the need to pay military recruits more was something that was lacking in the bill, which of course Democratic colleagues were on hand to point out it was, Marge.
Are we going to have to sit around and wait for our military members at Joint Base Andrews to charge their electric vehicles to come into the nation's capital to defend us in case of an attack? I don't think the American people want to spend almost $18 million for that. Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst in North Carolina is another example of funding. Microgrid with electric vehicle charging infrastructure of $17.73 million. And another enormous waste of money. At a time, Madam Speaker, where military recruitment numbers are at an all-time embarrassing low, Americans do not want to spend money to play climate politics. If we're going to spend more money on our Department of Defense, on our NDAA, why don't we pay military recruits more money instead of paying for electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging stations? That is an embarrassment, and I think it's an insult to the American people who work very hard to pay their taxes. Another little fact that everyone needs to know is there's a problem with electric vehicle charging stations. They don't always work. As a matter of fact, a recent number that came out is 1 out of every 4 electric vehicle charging stations do not work. So this is an investment into a system that isn't reliable, isn't proven, and is a massive waste of the American people's money.
Representative Jennifer McClellan spoke soon after Marjorie Taylor Greene and quickly pointed out, as many Democrats have in the past, Marjorie is, as we say in Scotland, full of wind and pish. And so she shut down Marjorie's complaint to her face.
The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Virginia, Ms. McClellan.
The gentlewoman from Virginia is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member Smith. I have good news in that the NDAA does include a raise for our service members, which is long overdue, but we can multitask. And for all of the reasons that Ranking Member Smith said, it's important that we work to save our planet, because if we don't, it will have longer term and short term national security implications and implications for the readiness of our service members, which we heard in committee time and time again. But in addition to the climate benefits, EVs emit less noise and heat, so they're harder for our enemies to detect. They improve responsiveness and flexibility and decrease our reliance on fossil fuels, so that should fuel supplies ever be compromised or slow, our armed forces will still be able to respond because they have more options available. And yet, Republicans want to play politics with climate, not the Democrats. We are working to address climate change. We are looking to respond to climate change and make sure that our military remains ready and does not continue to contribute to global warming itself.
Now, as was noted by a journalist at The Hill, Emily Brooks, this year's NDAA could look different from years past, where the House usually passes an appropriations measure with bipartisan support. But she pointed out that, quote, culture war amendments that could be added to the House's mammoth annual defense bill threaten to turn the normally bipartisan measure into a partisan one. And as we know, nobody spearheads a culture war quite like Marge. In fact, strip away the faux outrage and fear-mongering and culture wars, what are you actually left with?
Are we going to have another few weeks of trying to elect a speaker, or what happens?
God help us. The House Republican majority is a dysfunctional embarrassment. I mean, Speaker Johnson didn't ask for this job. He stepped up when the House couldn't elect a replacement for Kevin McCarthy. He's trying to manage an unmanageable conference. Republicans need to understand that they control one half of one branch of government, and now they're going to control it by one vote. You can't impose your will on the entire government when you have one half of one branch of government with one vote. I want to cut spending too. I want to do all these things. If you want to do that, there's a simple way to do it. Win elections. Don't nominate lunatics. Get people who can actually win a general election, not just a Republican primary. Take back the Senate. Take back the White House. That's how Biden got the spending through. So that's how, if we want to cut the spending, that's how you get to do it. You can't do it by having this internal chaos.
What has she accomplished while in office? Well, that answer is easy. Absolutely nothing. To the point that her own Republican colleagues have spoke out against her as a desperate attempt to try and separate themselves from what she represents.
This was not a Republican bill. This was a Democrat bill.
Yeah, but people even in your own party are attacking you, saying we do not need more division. I mean, after all, Congressman, look how many people have left. Ken Buck stepping down, Mike Gallagher stepping down, and Mike Gallagher is leaving at a time that even makes things tougher for the Republicans, right? He's leaving early, isn't he?
Well, Moscow Marjorie has reached a new low. During the Russian Revolution, Lenin talked about American journalists who were writing glowing reports about Russia at the time as useful idiots. And I don't even think that Marjorie reaches that level of being a useful idiot here. She is just mouthing the Russian propaganda and really hurting American foreign policy in the process. She's acting completely irresponsibly. And again, when history looks at this period of time, Russia invaded Ukraine. Ukraine is fighting for its freedom, and we should be with the freedom fighters in this war.
But the thing is, you can no longer do that because the Republican Party has just become the MAGA party. And she, Marjorie Taylor Greene, is fully MAGA. She is everything that red hat represents. Inflammatory rhetoric, hyperbole, lip service, and last but not least, a rather impressive level of shamelessness. One that allows her to get on a pedestal proudly and spew nonsense about a bill that if she merely took 10 seconds to read, would understand that she was mistaken.
So when you want to talk about misinformation, Mr. Snyder, you might actually look a little closer to American media if you don't like what they're saying. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, does he have the opportunity to respond to the gentlelady?
Sure.
Yeah.
I didn't ask him a question, Mr. Raskin.
You asked multiple questions.
First of all, I'd like to thank the representative from Georgia by making clear with her comments and with her person that any discussion of political warfare has to include Russia, Ukraine, and America. She's just demonstrated that point, I think, very powerfully. On the question of Nazis, I've written 2 books as a historian about Nazis and the Holocaust. On the question of Ukrainian nationalism, I am the leading scholar of that subject in North America and have been writing about it for 20 years. If the chamber is interested in the degree of far-right participation in Ukrainian politics, you can be assured that no far-right party has ever crossed 3% in Ukrainian election. So of course, there are bad people in every country, but by any comparative standard is a very small phenomenon. In Russia, on the other hand, the army includes openly Nazi formations, such as Rushich. The government itself is fascist in character, and it is carrying out a war which includes deportation of children by the tens of thousands, the open intention of destroying a state, as well as mass torture. So if we're looking for fascism, and if there is anyone who is sincerely concerned about halting fascism or racism, you would wish to halt Russia.
But why do that when you can get a quick 10-second clip for the base to feast on and post on Twitter? After all, we know that base love being manipulated. See Biden's New York Post saga, for example.
Send it to the big house, not the White House. Get the new exclusive tees, mugs, and stickers right now at store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.